My parents have been with me through my difficult times, the most crucial being when I was diagnosed with post-orgasmic syndrome when I turned 18. I remember the first experience I had as if it were yesterday. Josh was narcissistic, manipulative, and arrogant, accustomed to having his whims complied without complaint after a rough snap of his fingers. He thought he was cunning, invincible, but the disappointing truth was that he was very easy to read. I consented to sleep with him because he guaranteed me what, at the time, I wanted, sex with no strings attached. I still regret my stupidity. I had to do all the work as if he were a king and I was his impotent servant. He denigrated me. He wasn't patient or meticulous in preparing me. From the start, it was horrible, mortifying, but my circumstances worsened catastrophically when I managed to finish. The symptoms caught me off guard, draining my energy like a vampire draining blood and immobilizing me on the spot. Josh at least had the decorum to be alarmed and contact emergency services. At that visit, the doctors were unable to determine the exact cause of my collapse. However, as I set out to broaden my horizons and prevent the nauseating and dreadful experience with Josh from controlling me and depriving me of exploring my body, desires, and preferences, the signs gradually became more and more unmistakable. It was one of the most depressing, volatile, and exhausting phases I had the misfortune to suffer through. My sexuality was just blossoming, and already it was being threatened with an abrupt and precipitous climax. Pun intended. My parents searched for the best professionals and wasted millions on treatments and alternative medicines that were ultimately useless. They hugged me as I cried my rage, frustration, and grief because no matter how much I wished or begged any deity who was willing to listen, out of compassion, the heartbreaking conclusion was always the same. My disease is incurable. That's why they were so flabbergasted and speechless when 3 years later, I told them I wanted to join the porn industry.
Honey, are you absolutely certain that's what you want?
My mother had questioned with trepidation. Her eyes, just as green as mine, were dulled by stress and a shortage of energy. Yes, was my simple retort. In my brief explanation, I didn't add that I had already chosen my pen name, that my OnlyFans user was created, and that I had an erotic photo posted with a brief introduction in the description box.
Why, Ellie?
My father pressed with disbelief. Growing up, I had my doubts about whether we were truly related because, in contrast to my mother, he and I looked nothing alike. A fact that hasn't changed at this point, but a DNA test I secretly took corroborated our kinship. Yes, I am his biological son. Well, I'm not shy, I'm not afraid of cameras, and I love f***ing. My father laughed. My mother, as usual, blushed at my vulgar vocabulary. But in all honesty, it's my peculiar way of saying "f** you" to my disorder. As you may understand, I'm in the acceptance phase, or the rebellious one. I'll leave that up to you. And that's how simple it was to convince them. There was no shouting, accusations, embarrassment, unleashed anger, or prohibitions. Just kindness, love, and valuable advice that I wrote down not to forget.